Welcome to another edition of Business Today, where we discuss in depth the business world and its dealings. Today we have planned a pretty interesting segment for you. We are today looking at real estate investment trust, to be more specific. To talk about this, we have brought on a Director of Corporate Affairs from the Securities and Exchange Commission. So we'll learn a little bit about him before we have a chat.
Harshana Suriyapperuma is a Director Corporate Affairs at the Securities and Exchange Commission of Sri Lanka. He has received a PhD on Business Networking and Business Performance from the Management and Science University of Malaysia, MBA from the Postgraduate Institute of Management. He is a fellow member at the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants UK and former fellow member of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants UK and fellow member of the CPA Australia, an associate member of the Chartered Institute of Marketing, UK. He has over 26 years of work experience in local and overseas institutions, including 6 years in Africa and 5 years in Australia, ranging from family business to listed companies and government engagements. Dr. Harshana has contributed expertise to Appointer member to the World Bank Doing Business Ranking Committee, Central Bank Governor appointed nominee to the National Financial Inclusion Strategy, functioned as an appointed member of the Sri Lanka Statutory Accounting Standards Committee, appointed member on the World Bank Initiative on ROSC Committee, spearheading the Focus Group on Corporate Governance Revision for Public Listed Entities.
And Dr. Harshana Suriyapperuma is in the studio with us. Dr. Harshana Suriyapperuma, welcome to the show. Great to have you all.
Very good evening, Anmol. Thank you very much for having me.
Now, Dr. Suriyapperuma, you function as the Director of Corporate Affairs at the SEC. Today we are actually going to talk about real estate investment trust, as you call it, right? Or
REITs.
REITs, yes. So can you tell us a little bit about it, the real estate investment trust?
Sure. It is very interesting concept. It is available in rest of the parts of the world for quite some times now. It is a concept inherently where pooled resources of investors are collected together, and those pooled money are invested in real estate properties. So the beauty of this arrangement is typically the real estate segment assets are quite expensive for ordinary citizens to afford. If you take Sri Lanka for an example, if somebody wants to invest, people have choices from fixed deposits in banks, savings accounts, investing in gold, investing in land and buildings, etc. So that's where if somebody is considering to invest in land and buildings, they find it extremely unaffordable to invest in real estate segment. That is where real estate investment trust will come and bridge that gap. An ordinary citizen now can invest with as little as 1,000 rupees. So imagine one is able to access to the returns, meaning in terms of the capital growth of the real estate property as well as regular return through rental income, etc., that one can afford to invest in the real estate market with as low as 1,000 rupees, for example. And the benefits are not only that. With the guidance of the chairman and the members of the commission, the Gazette was issued July last year, and the Gazette mandates distribution of dividends, which is contrary to the existing mechanism that is available in the listed companies. The choice of paying dividends is available to the directors, whereas for REITs, the choice is taken out and it is mandated that 90% of dividends has to be distributed as dividends to the investors. So that's a very good starting point. Second one, the frequency of paying dividends, because these real estate assets are generating returns on a frequent basis, real estate investment trust will also receive returns on a regular basis. So if the managing company is willing, they can pay dividends either on annual basis, on biannual basis, quarterly basis, even on monthly basis. This makes real estate investment trust very attractive. And why did the SEC gets into creating a product of this nature? Is particularly we have a dual mandate in terms of our objectives, etc. That is, in one angle, the regulation of it, and from the other perspective, it is the development of the market. Development of the market means engaging new stakeholders, bringing in new products, introducing various other elements, supporting new entities to come and obtaining listings, etc. So as part of that mandate, we have delivered this real estate investment trust new product to the market, which will open up a whole new horizon of investment opportunities for investors, and at the same time it has provided a whole heap of benefits to the business community as well.
And talking about securities and trusts, now something that comes to mind when you're looking at something like this is the credit swap scenario that happened in 2008 that led to a financial meltdown. So what steps have you taken to ensure the safeguard of the investments of the small-time investors or the majority investors?
Very interesting approach. So even though there are so many views expressed out there relating to the investor protection, the best benchmark to look at how investors' interests are looked after is the World Bank prepared Doing Business Index. So the World Bank has identified and lined up 190 countries across the world, and based on different criteria they have assessed countries. I'm happy to say Sri Lanka is world ranked number 28 in terms of minority investor protection. So this shows the relentless effort the members of the Commission and the Secretariat over a period of time that we have taken, and to develop a framework that looks after the interest of investors. Just to say, Sri Lanka is number 28 and USA is number 36, so we are ahead of United States as well in terms of the framework that we have. So this is particularly interesting for foreign investors. When they are considering to invest in a country, they look at various aspects. One of them is how competitive a particular nation for investment purposes. And in Sri Lanka, there are various categories. One of them is the protection of minority investors, and the fact that we are among the best 30 in the world, that itself is a sentiment, the type of framework we have available in Sri Lanka to look after the interest of investors, particularly minority investors. Why? Major shareholders by definition have a large controlling stake in the entity, whereas the framework available ensures a level playing field for both parties.
And what is actually in the rate? What sort of assets are there?
Very interesting. So typically across the world, they allow many different types of assets to be brought into a real estate investment trust. In other countries, land could be acquired into a REIT, buildings could be acquired into a REIT, infrastructure projects could be acquired into a REIT. As the phase 1 in Sri Lanka, we have decided to introduce completed buildings, so that takes away the ambiguity and the unnecessary risks relating to the completion issues, obtaining certification issues, etc. So in Sri Lankan framework, it is allowed buildings that are fully completed, buildings that are generating income, and the audited financials are available to confirm during the last 12 months the building was generating income as well. So provided those criteria are met, buildings are allowed. However, in addition to even infrastructure projects in Sri Lanka, say someone has a hydropower plant or a wind farm or a solar power farm, those could be brought into a REIT structure as well. And there are two major ways of bringing in assets into a REIT, either through an outright transfer of the ownership of the property into the REIT or through leasing the asset into the REIT. So this is a wonderful opportunity for existing businesses to unlock some of the capital that are currently tied up in their balance sheets. Because entrepreneurs are always bubbling up with new ideas, concepts, they need capital to move in with their new projects. So REITs will provide that extra support to the business entities by allowing them to unlock some of the capital through the REIT structure and go ahead with their new ideas and plans. So that's one way businesses can benefit, but at the same time there are other opportunities REITs are bringing into the business community as well. For example, if one wants to get involved as a REIT manager, so that's a complete new opportunity available to business community, provided they meet the criteria specified in the Gazette. they can set up a business which will qualify them, enable them to obtain a license from the SEC to function as a REIT manager, and it will allow them to earn a significant fee incomes as well. So it is not another important aspect is REITs are not limited to private sector businesses. Even public sector assets could be considered into a real estate investment trust. So this takes the controversy completely away, where whether the ownership of our assets, our land is taken away to somewhere else. REITs is an ideal solution. Why? Because always the ownership of the asset remains with the Sri Lankan trustee. We allow a licensed commercial bank or a bank licensed by the central bank to act as a trustee, and trustee will continue to hold the properties. However, that does not mean foreigners can't invest in real estate investment trust, because anyone can invest through the unit trust mechanism that is available. When they buy the units of the REIT, not the property itself. By having access to the units of the REIT, they'll be able to reap the capital benefit over a period of time, regular rental benefit as an ongoing income, etc.
Now, talking about a private investor or a private entrepreneur who's interested in joining up with the REIT, what sort of documents should they really prepare? Now, you talked about the income statements for the past 12 months. Apart from that, what do they need?
Sure. The process is the regulator has tried to make it as simple as possible. The different types of requirements are clearly specified in the Gazette document itself, clearly laid down the type of application, type of information, financial information, auditor certification. In addition to that one, it requires certain types of valuations to be submitted. So all those are specified, and provided those specified documents are submitted to the SEC, within a period of 1 month, SEC will get back to the applicant to give a feedback as to the acceptability or otherwise of the application, and provided if there are any shortcomings, those are addressed, license is granted. It's as simple as that. Even though I say there's a lot of technicalities that are involved, particularly relating to structuring of the REITs, etc., pricing of the units of those REITs. So the managing company need to get the service of competent individuals, competent experts, let's say auditors, business valuers, property valuers. It's a pool of individuals, experts, that they put their efforts together to create this particular REIT. Provided those documentation are in order, I don't think it's a difficult exercise for somebody to obtain the license from the SEC.
I think we'll talk a little bit about it after a short break. We will go for a short break, and we'll be back with more discussion about the real estate investment trust. Welcome back to Business Today. We are talking about real estate investment trust, and we were just talking about the opportunities for entrepreneurs to actually join up with the REITs. Now, talking about the REITs themselves, what different categories are there for investors to look at?
Sure. So REITs can be looked at from two different aspects. There is one type where the period of the REIT is specified at the time of starting the REIT. For example, let's say this particular REIT A is set up for a 10-year period. Then there's another category of REITs which says there's no end date specified at the time of starting the REIT. The particular REIT, let's say for argument's sake, that has REIT B. So the REIT B acquires a property, for example 100 million, and they continue to own the property until the property value reaches up to about 500 million. After 10-15 years, the managing company decides to liquidate the asset. Then at that point, the managing company will distribute the returns, both the capital gain returns that was accumulated over a period of time and other returns along with the investors. So based on whether it is for a specified period of time or an open-ended type of a REIT that will continue for a longer period of time, investors can select. But from another perspective, whether the types of asset acquired into the REIT, so one can be acquired from an outright purchase basis, and another type is acquired on a lease rental, on a long-term lease basis. So that's another type of categorization of REITs available. I'll take an example to demonstrate this one to make, since this is a new product for Sri Lankan market. Let's say there's a private hospital that is available, currently functioning 100 beds hospital, and the management wants to move into to set up a new lab. So they want to unlock some capital. There are two options. So the management can either outright transfer the hospital while the hospital is functioning. The ownership of the hospital will be transferred into the REIT. And the second option is, while the hospital is running, a long-term lease is provided into the REIT. So through the lease arrangement, at the beginning, the hospital management is able to get a large amount of money at once and use that capital that is unlocked to set up another hospital elsewhere in another district, for example, or to start a labs to collect their medical reports, etc., to venture into other areas, etc. For the investors, the hospital will continue to pay rent into the to REIT over a period of time, and the REIT managing company is now able to distribute those rental income as dividends to investors. So from any angle, either from the investors angle or from the business angle, this is a win-win situation compared to some of the conventional arrangements that are available. And a particular advantage, if you see in the REIT structure to businesses, is currently if somebody wants to obtain a facility from the banking sector, let's say, there are certain challenges. Whereas if you take a lease, for example, you'll be able to retain your ownership of the property by transferring the asset into the REIT as a lease arrangement. So you are able to control your property, you are able to generate business income through your property. However, the lease rentals component has now been shifted into the real estate investment trust, and the investors are able to benefit from that one as well.
Finally, looking at the REITs itself, how can a small-time investor or someone who's with cash actually buy a REIT? What are the facilities available for them to learn more or to actually go through the investment?
Sure. So as I said at the beginning, this has changed the game for investors to invest in real estate segment. With as little as 1,000 rupees, one can invest in real estate segment through a real estate investment trust. So they need to get into a real estate, once the real estate trusts are set up, they need to approach the managing company. They will lay down the procedure to follow. I'm sure it's a very simple process which is similar to that of our existing unit trust. By filling your required applications and making your first contribution of 1,000 rupees, you are able to purchase the units of the real estate investment trust, and as savings on a monthly basis, you can even direct your bank account to bank to send some money to the real estate investment trust on a monthly basis. So your savings will build up, but in the real estate asset segment, not in the savings account in the bank. So the investor will have the advantage to benefit from the price or the value accumulation, value appreciation of the real estate property through the real estate investment trust. So this is a wonderful opportunity, particularly to many young investors. As I said at the beginning, capital market investments are inherently for a longer term period. So if one would come into the capital market thinking for a quick buck for within a short period of time, I'm sure many would be disappointed. So similarly, inherent feature of the real estate investment trust is for a longer period of time, and if one could continue to invest in the REITs, I'm sure they are bound to benefit in the long term. And there are a lot of safeguards built in, such as the involvement of valuers, involvement of independent auditors, the continuous monitoring and the supervision by the Securities and Exchange Commission of Sri Lanka. So there are a lot of added features built in to create a more secure investment through the real estate investment trusts.
Thank you, Dr.